Chosen one, stop everything you are doing right now and lock your attention on this message. Not tomorrow, not after you finish what you were doing, right now, because what heaven just released is not something you can afford to hear late. The enemy is working overtime today for one reason and one reason only. He knows that what is about to be unlocked in your life cannot be undone once it is released. It all ends now. The delay, the confusion, the warfare that has been pressing against your mind and your chest since the beginning of this week. But here is what you need to understand. This is not ending because of luck or coincidence. It is ending because of what you have done, because of every moment you held on when everything in you was screaming to let go. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. Heaven did. This is a divine appointment that was scheduled before the foundations of the earth were laid. You are not a random viewer. You are a chosen witness to an emergency decree. Stay until the final second of this message, because in the next few minutes I am going to hand you the exact verdict heaven has issued over your life in this season. I am going to show you the moment this week when you unknowingly activated what the enemy has been trying to prevent. And at the end, we are going to seal this lockdown with a declaration that closes every door the enemy has been using to access your peace, your family, and your future. Do not click away. Your future self is not asking you to stay. Your future self is begging you, because if you leave before the verdict is read, you walk away from the very moment heaven chose to intervene. I know what the atmosphere has felt like for the last 72 hours. It has not just been quiet, it has been dense, heavy in a way you cannot fully explain to anyone around you, like the pressure inside a room where all the windows have been sealed shut. Maybe you found yourself standing in the middle of your kitchen this week, or sitting at your desk, and you stopped moving, not because you forgot what you were doing, but because something inside you felt like the world was holding its breath, like something enormous was approaching, and you could feel it before you could name it. Or maybe you woke up at 3 inches the morning this week and you were not groggy. You were wide awake, alert, sitting upright in the dark with a weight on your chest that no amount of deep breathing would lift. You feel suspended, like you are standing in a corridor between the season that is ending and the season that has been promised. And the longer you stand in that corridor, the more a thought has been pressing against the back of your mind. And in this suspension, the enemy has been whispering a very specific lie. Listen to your thoughts right now. He has been telling you that the reason heaven feels silent is because you forfeited something. He has been replaying a moment from this week or last week on a loop inside your mind. Maybe it was the moment you did not speak up when you should have. Maybe it was the moment you pulled back from someone instead of pushing through. Maybe it was the moment you were so exhausted that you stopped praying and just stared at the ceiling and said nothing. The accuser is pointing to that moment and telling you that because of it, the blessing has been rerouted, that you have disqualified yourself, that the lockdown you feel is not heaven protecting you, but heaven withdrawing from you. But I need you to hear what the scripture actually says about this moment. Isaiah 54:17 says, "No weapon formed against you shall prosper, and every tongue that rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of the Lord." Listen to that word. Every tongue that rises against you in judgment. That includes the tongue inside your own mind. That includes the voice that has been narrating your failure over your own footage. That voice does not have jurisdiction here. It has no authority over the heritage that has already been issued in your name. You are not in a withdrawal. You are in a lockdown. And there is a difference. A withdrawal means something left. A lockdown means something is being sealed in. Heaven has issued an emergency lockdown not because it is pulling back from you, but because it is locking something into place over your life that the enemy cannot interrupt, cannot delay, and cannot reverse. The heaviness you feel is not the weight of abandonment, it is the weight of finality. It is the pressure of a door being sealed shut on a season that nearly destroyed you. That moment when you went silent instead of retaliating, that was not weakness. That moment when you pulled back instead of engaging, that was not retreat. That was the strategy of a chosen one who does not even fully understand yet how much power they carry. Heaven was not watching that moment with disappointment. Heaven was watching that moment and saying, "There it is." That is the act that triggers the lockdown. You did not delay your breakthrough. You signed the decree that released it. Hit the like button if this message landed somewhere deep before you even understood why. Drop a comment below and tell me, what is the one moment from this week that the enemy has been trying to use against you? Write it out, because naming it is the first act of the verdict. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now let's go deeper into what heaven is actually saying in this moment. There is a reason you feel the way you do right now. Not restless in the ordinary sense, not simply tired or overwhelmed. What you're feeling isn't the kind of weariness that a good night's sleep can cure. It isn't the kind of heaviness that a vacation or a change of scenery can lift. What you're feeling is something far more significant than exhaustion. What you're feeling is the weight of a season that is ending and a season that hasn't fully opened yet. It is the sacred tension of a soul caught between 2 worlds, the world it has known and the world it has been called into. You are standing in a threshold, and thresholds are uncomfortable because they are not designed for lingering. They are designed for crossing. You can no longer go back to what you were. The old version of you has already been dismantled, piece by piece, through everything you've walked through. But you haven't yet stepped fully into what you're becoming, and the not yet of it feels like standing in midair. Most people interpret that discomfort as a sign that something is wrong. They look at the shakiness in their footing and assume God has lost the plot. They feel the instability and conclude the structure is failing. But heaven is telling you right now that discomfort you're feeling is the most accurate sign that something is finally right. The very fact that you cannot go backward is proof that God has been working. You are not falling, you are being launched. Think about what happened to Elijah after his greatest victory. This was not a man in the middle of a dry season. This was a man who had just stood on Mount Carmel and called down fire from heaven. He had just demonstrated, in the most dramatic and undeniable way possible, that the God of Israel was alive and active and incomparable. He had just proven the power of the Most High in front of an entire nation. Prophets, priests, royalty, and common people alike had witnessed the impossible become real through him. And then, almost immediately after the fire fell, he ran. He ran into the wilderness and sat down under a juniper tree and asked God to let him die. Not because he was spiritually bankrupt, not because he had failed, not because his faith had collapsed, but because after a major spiritual breakthrough, the enemy always launches his most ferocious, most targeted, most personal counterattack. And the cruelty of that counterattack isn't just its intensity, it's its timing. It comes when you are most depleted, when the adrenaline of the victory has worn off, when the crowd has gone home and you are alone again. And if you don't understand that pattern, if you don't recognize the signature of the enemy's tactics, you will interpret the attack as abandonment. You will sit in the silence that follows the fire and believe that God has withdrawn. You will think heaven has gone quiet, when actually God is doing something in the hidden places that your current capacity cannot yet sustain. He is repositioning you. He is preparing a new assignment that requires a deeper version of you than the one who just won the last battle. And the repositioning always feels like wilderness before it feels like promotion. That's the first thing you need to understand with absolute clarity tonight. The silence you've been sitting in is not rejection. It is not punishment. It is not the sound of a God who has moved on. It is preparation. Heaven doesn't go quiet on people it has forgotten. Heaven doesn't withdraw its presence from those it has abandoned. Heaven goes quiet strategically, purposefully, lovingly quiet on people it is about to use in ways so significant, so far-reaching, so far beyond what they could currently imagine, that knowing the full picture too soon would paralyze rather than propel them. Think about how a surgeon works. There is a moment in the operating room where everything is still, where the body is opened and the most critical work is happening beneath the surface. From the outside, it might look like nothing is moving, but inside, the most precise and consequential work of the entire procedure is underway. That is the silence you've been in. The silence is not the absence of God. The silence is the sound of God working in dimensions you cannot yet access with your natural senses. It is the sound of God building something in you that will not be visible until it is complete, and when it is complete, not even you will fully recognize the person standing in the mirror. But here's where it goes deeper, and this is what most people miss entirely. It's not just that you've been misreading the silence. It's that while you've been sitting in it, you've been making agreements, quiet agreements, subtle agreements, almost invisible agreements, the kind that don't announce themselves, the kind that slip through the back door of your mind in moments when your defenses were down and your spirit was tired. Agreements with lies that felt like truth because they arrived wearing the clothing of logic. They came wrapped in the voice of reason, in the language of self-awareness, in the tone of maturity, and so they didn't feel like deception. They felt like you finally seeing yourself clearly. Agreements like, maybe I was wrong about what I heard. Agreements like, maybe I'm not as chosen as I thought. Agreements like, maybe the calling was real once, but I've disqualified myself. Agreements like, maybe this is just how life is, and spiritual maturity means accepting that. And every single one of those agreements, every whispered concession you made to the enemy in a moment of exhaustion, has been building a wall. Brick by quiet brick, agreement by agreement, that wall has been rising between you and the very thing heaven has been trying to release into your hands. And right now, before we go any further, I need you to understand that those walls are not permanent. They were built in moments that are over. And what God is doing in this season is not just giving you a new assignment. He is tearing down what you built against yourself in the dark. This is where the story of Joseph becomes more than a Sunday school lesson, more than a narrative you've heard 100 times that you already know the ending to. Because the point of Joseph's story is not simply that things worked out. The point is what happened to him in the space between the pit and the palace. Joseph didn't just endure his suffering the way you endure a long flight, gritting your teeth, watching the clock, waiting for it to be over. Joseph was refined by it. He was sculpted by it. He was made unbreakable inside it. Every pit, every prison, every false accusation, every door of opportunity that seemed to open and then slammed shut, none of it was punishment. None of it was God losing the thread of the story. All of it was curriculum, the most precise, the most intentional, the most painful curriculum that could have been designed for what was waiting on the other side. The enemy thought he was destroying Joseph's destiny when his brothers threw him into that pit. The enemy thought he was neutralizing the threat when Potiphar's wife lied and Joseph was imprisoned. But God was doing something the enemy could not comprehend, because the enemy has never understood how God works. God was using every attack to excavate the character that the destiny required. He was using the betrayal to build a mercy that could govern without bitterness. He was using the prison to build an integrity that couldn't be bought. He was using the false accusation to build a spirit that didn't need vindication from people because it had already received it from heaven. You cannot carry a palace-level assignment with a pit-level mindset. You cannot steward nation-shifting authority with the fragile ego of someone who still needs to prove themselves. You cannot be trusted with power that affects millions when your identity is still anchored in the approval of people who were never meant to define you. And God, in His wisdom and His love that sometimes looks nothing like what we expect love to look like, will allow the process to strip every layer of self-sufficiency, every false identity, every borrowed confidence, every performance-driven covering you've wrapped around yourself for protection. He will strip it until what remains is something that cannot be shaken by the opinions of people, something that cannot be inflated by success or deflated by failure, something that can only be sustained by divine strength and not human effort. That is what is being built in you right now, and it is worth every moment of the cost. And this leads us to something that's coming up in just a moment that I need you to stay with me for, because it's the piece that breaks the cycle. But before we get there, you need to sit with this truth first and let it settle all the way down into the deepest parts of you where the doubt has been living. The delay in your life has not been a malfunction. It has not been evidence of divine neglect or cosmic oversight. It has not been the universe getting the coordinates wrong. It has been a design. What felt like doors closing was actually God redirecting the trajectory of your steps towards something that wasn't ready for you yet, or towards something you weren't ready for yet. And both of those things are true simultaneously, because divine timing is not just about external readiness, it is about internal formation. There is a difference between a door God closes and a door God hasn't opened yet. One is a redirection, a rerouting that may feel like loss in the moment, but is actually God preserving you from a path that would have taken you somewhere you were never meant to go. The other is a reservation, a holding, a keeping, a divine not yet that carries in it the promise of a yes that is being prepared with a level of care and intentionality that your natural eyes cannot currently see. And God has been holding something in reservation for you, something that has your name written on it in eternity, something that has been being prepared in the heavenly places since before you were born. But it requires you to arrive at it whole, not wounded beyond healing, not desperate in a way that would make you accept a counterfeit, not still bleeding from what the last season cost you, not carrying the grief of old losses into a new assignment that needs you fully present. He has been waiting for you to be ready, not perfect, but whole, not flawless, but healed enough to receive what He has been holding. Now, once you understand that, once you feel the truth of it, not just in your mind, but in the center of your chest, you're ready for this. The enemy has been working overtime in this particular season, not because you are losing, not because you are falling behind, not because the plan has been compromised. The enemy has been working overtime because you are about to win in a way that cannot be undone. There is a difference between a temporary victory and a permanent shift. And what is on the other side of this threshold is a permanent shift. A shift in your identity, in your authority, in your assignment, in your impact. And the enemy knows it, even if you don't yet. Spiritual warfare doesn't intensify when you're irrelevant. It doesn't escalate when you're moving in the wrong direction. It intensifies, it becomes strategic, coordinated, relentless when your next step threatens a kingdom that is not God's. When the ground you are about to occupy is ground the enemy has been holding illegally, and your advancing means his territory shrinks. The attacks you've been experiencing, the confusion that seems to come from nowhere, the spiritual heaviness that settles on you without warning, the relationships that suddenly became complicated or fractured, the plans that collapsed without explanation at the most inexplicable moments. These are not random, they are not bad luck, they are not the universe being indifferent, they are coordinated. And a coordinated attack always reveals a coordinated purpose on the other side of it. You don't mobilize a coordinated opposition against someone who isn't a threat. The intensity of the warfare is a declaration about the magnitude of what is coming. Think of it this way, because this example will stay with you. When Nehemiah was rebuilding the wall of Jerusalem, his enemies didn't ignore him. They didn't simply let the work proceed without interference. From the moment he began, the opposition began. First, they mocked him, trying to make the vision seem foolish, trying to get him to defend the work instead of doing it. Then they threatened him, trying to make him afraid. Then they tried to distract him, sending word that they wanted a meeting, framing it as dialogue, presenting it as an opportunity for negotiation and peace. And at every stage, Nehemiah understood something that most people in his position would have missed. He understood that every attempt to pull him away from the wall, every invitation to come down and explain himself, every manufactured crisis designed to redirect his attention, all of it was proof that the work mattered, not a suggestion that it mattered. Proof, incontrovertible, undeniable proof. Because nobody sends coordinated opposition against something that isn't working. Nobody mobilizes resources to stop a work that isn't threatening. And when Nehemiah said, "I am doing a great work and I cannot come down," that declaration was not arrogance. It was not stubbornness. It was discernment of the highest order. It was the recognition that some invitations are actually interruptions dressed up as opportunities. That some conversations are actually weapons disguised as dialogue. That sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is refuse to leave the wall. And you need that same discernment right now, with the same clarity and the same resolve, because not everything that looks like an open door in this season is a door heaven opened. And not every voice calling you away from your assignment is a voice you should follow. Stay with me. Because what's coming next is the part that breaks the cycle for people who have been going around the same mountain for years. And I mean going around it, literally the same patterns, the same setbacks, the same moments of almost breakthrough that dissolve into another waiting season, the same sense that you are so close but somehow never fully arriving. If that has been your experience, I need you to understand that the mountain is not the problem, and the enemy is not the only force keeping you in the circle. There is a pattern that keeps people locked in delay, and it has nothing to do with lack of faith. It has nothing to do with sin. It has nothing to do with the enemy having more power than God over your life. It has nothing to do with your worthiness or your track record or the number of times you've stumbled. The pattern is this: you have been trying to step into your future while still emotionally living in your past. Not consciously. You are not choosing this. You don't wake up every morning and decide to rehearse the pain, to replay the betrayals, to recite the list of everything that broke. But somewhere underneath your forward motion, underneath the declarations you make and the faith you express and the steps you take, there are open wounds that never fully healed. And those wounds have been quietly, consistently, relentlessly making decisions for you. Every time an opportunity appears and something inside you tightens rather than opens, that is an old wound making the decision before you can. Every time favor begins to form around you and something whispers that it won't last, that you'll be exposed, that it will be taken away, that is an old rejection speaking with borrowed authority. It was never given. Every time you move forward with your vision but keep one eye over your shoulder, watching for the moment when it all collapses, that is old pain still steering even after the hands that caused it are long gone. You have been moving forward with one foot while the other is still chained to something that happened years ago, something that God already finished with, already redeemed, already folded into the story in a way that will ultimately serve your destiny. But the wound hasn't received that message yet, and until it does, it will keep calling you back. This is what the healing of blind Bartimaeus is really about when you read it with eyes opened by the Spirit. When Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" that was not a rhetorical question. It was not a ceremonial gesture, a formality of interaction that meant nothing beyond its surface. It was a surgical question. It was Jesus reaching past the obvious past, the blindness that everyone could see, and asking Bartimaeus to name the desire that would require him to give up everything he had built around his limitation. Because Bartimaeus had been blind long enough that his blindness had become his identity, it wasn't just a condition he was living with. It was who he was in that community, in that culture, in his own understanding of himself. His cloak, the cloak he threw aside without a second thought when Jesus called him that cloak, was not simply a garment. In that culture, it was the officially designated garment given to certified beggars. It was his license to receive charity. It was his proof of status, his permission to ask, his recognized identity in the social order. It was, in a very real sense, the only security he had. And he threw it aside before he received his sight, before the miracle, before he could see where he was going or what he was walking into. He released the identity that his suffering had assigned him before he could receive the sight that heaven had always intended for him. Before the confirmation came, he made the declaration with his body, "I am not what my blindness says I am. I am what the voice calling me says I am." You have a cloak like that, not made of fabric, but woven from years of surviving, woven from the labels others put on you that you eventually stopped arguing with, woven from the definitions your pain handed you that you eventually accepted because they at least made sense of what you had experienced. And heaven is asking you right now, are you willing to throw it off before you can see what comes next? Are you willing to release the identity your suffering gave you before the new one is fully visible? Because that is the sequence. The release comes first, the sight comes after. But let me challenge you with something, because here's the part that requires the most courage, to receive the part that no one wants to hear, because it is far more uncomfortable than blaming the enemy or the past or the people who hurt you. Some of what's been holding you back isn't the enemy. It isn't your past. It isn't even the people who hurt you, though those wounds are real, and the damage they caused was real. Some of what has been keeping you in the waiting place is something that lives inside you. And I say this not to condemn, not to shame, not to add to the weight you're already carrying, but to offer you the only kind of truth that actually sets people free, the kind that is specific enough to cut. Some of it is the comfort you have found in your own delay. Because delay, as excruciating and disorienting and lonely as it can be, also carries a certain safety that we rarely talk about. As long as you haven't fully stepped out, you haven't fully failed. As long as the assignment is still coming, you don't have to face the terrifying responsibility of it being now. As long as the calling is still on the horizon, you don't have to reckon with what it would mean to actually walk in it, the exposure of it, the accountability of it, the impossibility of it without divine strength sustaining every single step. There is a part of the human heart, even the most sincere, most devoted, most genuinely surrendered heart, that mistakes preparation for permanence. That begins to live in the waiting room as though it were the destination. That uses the posture of waiting as a hiding place and calls it humility. That calls fear wisdom, and calls avoidance discernment, and calls the refusal to step out waiting on God's timing, when really it is waiting for the fear to go away. And God, who sees the whole landscape of every heart that was ever created, God sees that too. He sees the real reason behind the waiting. He sees the fear dressed in spiritual clothing, and He is not condemning you for it. He understands, with a compassion you cannot fully measure, why you have stayed where you are. But he is calling you out of it, because he did not design you for the waiting room. He designed you for the field, and the field has been waiting for you long enough. Because here's what is irrevocably, undeniably, eternally true. The thing you are most afraid of stepping into is the exact thing you were most precisely designed for. Not despite your history, not in spite of your wounding, not after your healing is complete. Because of it, because of all of it. The reason it feels too large, too exposed, too impossible, is because it is too large for who you used to be. It is too exposed for the version of you that needed people's approval to move. It is too impossible for the version of you that was relying on its own strength to carry what only God can carry. But you are not who you used to be. And that is the entire point of everything you have walked through. That is the reason for the stripping. That is the reason for the wilderness. That is the reason for the silence and the setback and the season that felt like it would never end. Every single thing that God allowed, and make no mistake, He allowed it. He was present in it. He was working through it. All of it was God removing who you were so that who He made you to be could finally stand up without the obstruction of an old self that no longer served the assignment. And the version of you that is emerging from this process, the one being formed in the furnace of this particular season, that version is capable of carrying what is coming. Not because you have arrived at some spiritual perfection, but because you have arrived at the place where you know, with a certainty that suffering produces in ways comfort never can, that you cannot do this without Him. And that knowledge, that bone-deep, experiential, proven knowledge of your complete dependence on God, is not weakness. It is the most dangerous spiritual weapon on the planet. And here is the revelation that reframes everything, the unexpected truth that turns the entire narrative on its head and makes the suffering make sense in a way that nothing else can. You have been praying for God to change your circumstances. You have been asking Him, repeatedly and earnestly and sometimes desperately, to move the obstacles, to open the doors, to shift the external landscape of your life so that stepping forward becomes easier, less costly, less terrifying. But God has not been answering that prayer the way you expected, because He has been answering a deeper one your spirit prayed before your mouth caught up with it. God has been using your circumstances to change you. Every circumstance you asked Him to remove, He turned into a refinery. Every situation you begged Him to end, He transformed into a classroom. Every obstacle you wanted Him to destroy, He used to develop the one thing that makes every other obstacle irrelevant, the unshakable, undeniable, deeply personal knowledge of who God is and who you are in Him. You have been asking Him to move the mountain, but He has been building inside you the kind of faith that doesn't need the mountain to move, the kind of faith that looks at the mountain and knows it has no authority over the word of God that was spoken over your life before the foundation of the world. The kind of faith that walks toward the impossible, not because the fear is gone, but because the God who called you is greater than the size of what stands between you and the fulfillment of His word. The breakthrough you've been waiting for isn't coming from outside of you. It has been forming inside of you this entire time, in the silence, in the wilderness, in the pit, in the prison. In every moment you felt most alone and most forgotten and most convinced that something had gone catastrophically wrong. It has been forming. And when it finally erupts, and it will, because God does not begin a work that He does not complete, it won't look like a rescue. It will look like an awakening. It will look like someone stepping out of the shadows who has no need to explain themselves, no need to defend their calling, no need to wait for permission from anyone whose authority doesn't come from heaven. It will look like someone who knows exactly who they are, walking in an authority that cannot be questioned, speaking with a voice that carries the weight of what they have survived, carrying a peace that no confusion can penetrate because it wasn't given by circumstances and cannot be taken by them. That is what heaven has been preparing. That is what this entire extended, exhausting, painful, holy season has been building toward. Not punishment, not abandonment, not delay for delay's sake, not God being slow or distracted or indifferent to the cost of the process, but the most intentional, most loving, most meticulously precise process of divine formation that your life has ever known, the kind of formation that only happens in the deepest fire, the longest silence, the most disorienting wilderness. And you are at the end of it. Hear me say this with everything in me: you are not in the middle, you are at the end. The formation is completing, the character is set, the authority has been tested and proven and purified. What comes next is not more of the same. What comes next is the release. What comes next is the step through the threshold that you have been standing at, and on the other side of it is everything that God promised you in the moments when you chose to believe, even when believing felt like the most unreasonable thing in the world. Place your hand on your heart and declare this with me right now, out loud if you can, because your voice carries weight in the spirit. The same voice that has been agreeing with fear is now going to agree with heaven. And that shift is not small, that shift is seismic. I release every agreement I made with fear in my weakest moments. I renounce every lie I accepted about myself in the silence, in the wilderness, in the aftermath of the pain. I break every word spoken over me that was never spoken by heaven, every label, every limitation, every definition that came from a source that had no authority to define me. I let go of the identity my suffering gave me, and I take up with both hands, deliberately and permanently, the identity my Creator assigned me before I took my first breath, before I made a single mistake, before I experienced a single loss. I declare that the silence in my life has not been abandonment. It has been preparation of the most precise and intentional kind. I declare that the attacks I've survived are not evidence of my weakness. They are irrefutable proof of the purpose I carry and the threat I pose to the kingdom of darkness. I am not behind. I have never been behind. God does not operate on a timetable that can be disrupted by anything the enemy does. I am not forgotten. My name is written. It has always been written, in the hand of the one who does not forget. I am not too broken, too late, too far gone, too damaged, too disqualified, or too ordinary. I am in the middle of the most precise divine process of my life, and I trust it completely. I step out of hiding right now. I step out of the waiting room I made into a home. I step out of the delay I chose when I called fear wisdom and called avoidance discernment. I step into this season with open hands and an open heart, not grasping, not guarding, but receiving everything heaven has been holding in reservation for me. My breakthrough is not coming. It is here. It has always been here, waiting for me to be the person who could carry it. And I am that person now. I receive it not when I feel ready, not when the circumstances align perfectly, not when the people around me agree, not when the fear disappears now, because heaven said now, and the word of heaven is the only word that has ever mattered. That is enough. That has always been enough. If this message reached something in you that needed to be reached, if it touched a place that has been waiting for exactly this, don't let it settle quietly. Don't let it be a moment that moved you and then faded. Let it move you in ways that last. Share it with someone who has been standing at the same threshold too long, because the word that breaks a cycle in you may be the word that breaks it in someone else too. Leave a word in the comments, not for the algorithm, not for visibility, but because declaring out loud what God is doing in your life is its own form of warfare. When you open your mouth and say, God is moving in my life, you are not just describing reality, you are establishing it. And come back when you need to be reminded of what heaven says about you, because this message will still be here, carrying the same weight, speaking the same truth, reaching the same deep place the 10th time you watch it as it did the first. Because truth does not expire, and what heaven says over you does not change with the season.